Hello everyone, welcome to Wealth Concept 365. In this video, we'll learn about the most common network protocols and ports and their functions. Before starting the video, please subscribe so you won't miss out any updates about upcoming videos. If you want notes and other study materials, please join our community. Network protocols are a set of rules and standards for communication between computers or between computer and other devices. They govern how data is transmitted and received. For example, when you try to visit a website like google.com, many things happen behind the scenes. Your computer sends a message to a DNS server which returns the IP address of Google. Then your computer establishes a connection with Google's server and sends a request message asking for the homepage. This process involves several network protocols such as the Internet Protocol, Transmission Control Protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and so on. These protocols ensure that your computer can communicate with other computers around the world to bring up the website successfully. There are hundreds of network protocols in use today, but the good news is that you don't need to know all of them. In this video, we'll focus on some common protocols and their port numbers. But before diving into the list, let me explain what port numbers are. Every device connected to a network has a unique IP address that allows other devices to send data to it. However, devices can have multiple applications that need to send and receive data, such as a web browser, email client, or file transfer program. All these applications need a way to identify themselves and receive data uniquely. That's where port numbers come in. A port number is a 16-bit integer that identifies a specific process or application on a device. Ports are often used to identify different services that run on the same device. For example, a web server might run on port 80, while an email server might run on port 25. When you try to access a website in your browser, your computer sends a network request to the website server. The request includes the port number of the server, which tells your computer how to connect to the server. Without port numbers, it would be difficult to distinguish between different services that run on the same device. Each service would have to use a different IP address, which could be confusing and inefficient. Fortunately, port numbers are easy to remember and they make it simple to identify different services on a network. So here is a list of common protocols and their default port numbers. Number 1, HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and it's the foundation of the World Wide Web. It's used to send and receive data between web browsers and web servers. For example, when you try to open a website in your browser, your computer sends an HTTP request to the website server asking for the home page. The server then processes the request and sends back an HTTP response containing the HTML code for the page. And if you open multiple tabs in your browser, each tab will have its own HTTP connection to the server. HTTP uses port 80 by default. Port 80 is a common port number that's reserved for HTTP. It's a well-known port, meaning that it's globally recognized and assigned to specific services. So, if you want to access a website using its IP address, you can simply use the IP address and port 80 to reach the website server. For example, if the IP address of Google's server is 1.1, you can open your browser and enter http://1.1, 1.1 to 80 to access Google's homepage. Number 2, HTTPS. HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. It is similar to HTTP, but it uses encryption to secure the connection between web browsers and web servers. It's commonly used for websites that handle sensitive information such as login credentials or credit card details. For example, when you log into your bank account, your computer sends an HTTPS request to the bank's server containing your username and password. The server then processes the request and sends back an HTTPS response indicating whether the login was successful or not. HTTPS uses port 443 by default. Port 443 is another well-known port that's reserved for HTTPS. Using HTTPS helps to protect against man-in-the-middle attacks, where attackers intercept the communication between two parties and attackers cannot see the information being exchanged. Number 3. FTP. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol, and it's used to transfer files between computers over a network. For example, if you want to upload a file to a web server, you can use an FTP client such as Filezilla to establish a connection with the server and upload the file. FTP uses port 21 by default. Port 21 is a well-known port that's reserved for FTP. FTP is an unencrypted protocol, which means that all data transferred using FTP is sent in plain text. This can be a security risk as attackers can intercept the data, and attackers can also exploit vulnerabilities in FTP to gain unauthorized access to a server. To mitigate these risks, you should use secure alternatives to FTP such as SFTP or FTPS. Number 4. SSH. SSH stands for Secure Shell, and it is used to establish a secure connection between computers over a network. It's commonly used for remote administration of servers and other devices. For example, if you want to access a server and run commands on it, you can use an SSH client such as PuTTY to connect to the server and execute the commands. SSH uses port 22 by default. Port 22 is a common port that's often used for SSH. However, it's important to note that this port can be changed for security reasons. By default, SSH uses port 22, but you can change this port number if you want to reduce the risk of brute force attacks. Brute force attacks are attacks where attackers try to guess the username and password of a user by trying all possible combinations. Changing the default port number can help to prevent these attacks because attackers will not know the port number to target. No. 5. DNS. DNS stands for Domain Name System, and it's used to translate domain names such as Google. CompTIA addresses such as 1.1, 1.1. It is an essential part of the internet infrastructure that allows users to access websites by using their domain names instead of memorizing their IP addresses. DNS uses port 53 by default. Port 53 is a well-known port that's reserved for DNS. DNS is a distributed system that consists of many different servers, and each server has its own IP address and port number. However, port 53 is the most common port used by DNS servers. No. 6. SMTP. SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and it's used to send emails over a network. For example, if you send an email from your email client such as Microsoft Outlook, your computer establishes a connection with an SMTP server and sends the email. The server then routes the email to the recipient's server and eventually to their inbox. SMTP uses port 25 by default. Port 25 is a well-known port that's reserved for SMTP. SMTP is a simple protocol that's easy to implement, but it's also vulnerable to spam and other attacks. To mitigate these risks, you should use secure alternatives to SMTP such as SMTPS or Startles. No. 7. POP3. POP3 stands for Post Office Protocol version 3, and it's used to retrieve emails from a mail server. For example, if you check your email on your smartphone, your phone establishes a connection with a POP3 server and downloads the emails from your inbox. POP3 uses port 995 by default. Port 995 is a common port that's used by POP3 servers. POP3 is a simple protocol that's efficient at retrieving emails, but it has some limitations. It doesn't support folders, and it can only be used with one device at a time. Number 8. IMAP. IMAP stands for Internet Message Access Protocol, and it's similar to POP3, but it allows you to access your emails from any device, and it supports folders. For example, if you check your email on your laptop and desktop, both devices can access the same inbox and folders. IMAP uses port 143 by default. Port 143 is a common port that's used by IMAP servers. IMAP is a more complex protocol than POP3, but it's more powerful and flexible. It allows for more advanced features such as offline access and search capabilities. Number 9. SNMP. SNMP stands for Simple Network Management Protocol, and it's used to manage and monitor network devices such as routers and switches. For example, if you want to configure a router, you can use an SNMP manager to establish a connection with the router and send commands to it. SNMP uses various community strings and port numbers depending on the version of SNMP being used. SNMP v1 and SNMP v2c use a community string as the authentication mechanism, and they typically use port 161 for management traffic. SNMP v3 uses a more secure authentication and encryption mechanism, and it uses port 160 for traps and port 163 for queries and responses. Number 10. SIP. SIP stands for Session Initiation Protocol, and it's used to establish and manage multimedia sessions such as voice over IP and video calls. For example, if you make a phone call over the internet, your computer establishes a connection with your friend's computer using SIP and the call is initiated. SIP uses various port numbers depending on the type of traffic. Typically, SIP uses UDP ports 5060 and 5061 for signaling and media transport. Number 11. DHCP. DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and it is used to assign IP addresses and other network configurations to devices on a network. For example, when you connect your smartphone to a Wi-Fi network, the router assigns an IP address to your phone using DHCP. DHCP uses UDP port 67 by default. Port 67 is a well-known port that's used by DHCP servers. DHCP is a client-server protocol, which means that there are DHCP clients and servers on the network. DHCP clients are the devices that request IP addresses and other network configurations, and DHCP servers are the devices that provide these configurations. Number 12. NAP. NAP stands for Network Mapper, and it is a tool used to discover hosts and services on a network. It's commonly used by network administrators to map out their network and identify potential security risks. NAP uses various port numbers depending on the scan type and target host. Typically, NAP uses TCP and UDP ports ranging from 1 to 65,535 for scanning network hosts. These are just some of the most common network protocols and ports in use today. There are hundreds more protocols, and each one plays an important role in the functionality of the Internet. I hope this video has been helpful in providing an overview of some of the most commonly used protocols and their port numbers. If you want to learn more about network protocols, please join our community. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.